Welcome to season 2 of Roof It Up. When you have a guest on your first season and then you go to season 2 and you're like, I really just want that guest back. Well, that is what's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. I have the one and only Tats here. And Tats, I'm going to let you let the crowd know who you are, and then also just share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get going on this. So on this podcast, we're really talking about those who are shaking the industry, who are making an impact around the world and in life. And this is Tats. Like, I would tell you as you're hearing this, he is the one man that when I was starting Saenz Global, said some really profound things without really realizing it. That gave me so much courage to go and move forward. And so I'm super excited to have you. I almost in a way I feel like Tats is a mentor without really like from afar, but yet when those moments come that I get to talk with him, he just is life changing. So Tats, super excited to have you on here. Can you let everybody know a little bit about yourself? And super excited about this podcast as we're getting curious to know more about you. So super excited. So go ahead, Tats, take it away.
Sure. I mean, you use the word curious. I'm always curious or interested in different things. I mean, I think from the roofing side of things, we have a building materials business, coatings business, which, originally started because, I was very interested in entrepreneurship. And it's through my mentor Peter, who invented many different things, and so the relationship we developed there, I just led me to so many different experiences and to meet great people like yourselves, doing wonderful things in different industries. So I think anything that I've done 100% for good or bad. And I've tried to make sure, my attention has always been directed towards things that are productive. And, when I do that, I have a lot of fun and I learn a ton. So I'm very grateful for that.
I love that. So Tats, share with us about, like, we're getting curious today. I want to know more about you, right? And just because I feel like your journey and kind of what you said, the good and the bad, but like you're a person that seems to be very intentional to always try to do what is right and what is good, and like making good decisions. Sometimes they might not end up being the best at moments, but I think we all deal with that as entrepreneurs, right? We think something's going to be great and then maybe it's not, but we learn from it anyways. So it ends up being great. But on your end, so Tats, before this whole journey, like, where are you? Like, where did you like? I always say, where did you come from? Like, what's your story? Like, how did you get here? Like, if your mom was to be on this show right now, what would she say? Like, oh yeah. So what would she say? Like, what's your story there? Like, who's
Yeah,
Tats?
sure. I was born in Japan. I came to Canada when I was 3. I
Hmm.
grew up, in Canada, and yeah, I mean, I had a lot of experiences growing up. My dad always loved to move around from house to house. It was this kind of hobby, right? And we weren't moving to like different parts of the world or anything, but it was just different parts of the area. So used to sort of adapting, used to just meeting new people through that. So I think for me, what has always been sort of a constant is, we're all influenced by our parents, right? And when I was growing up, I would always see my dad exercising or working out every single day. And he'd do it even when he was sick. So I just kind of had it grilled into me on like personal improvement in some way all the time. So that kind of reflects in a lot of things that I do. I enjoy sports or exercise, towards a direction, whether it's entrepreneurship. I like building things, seeing things kind of grow and ideas sort of propagate. So I think that's kind of how it's always been. And when I was at like very small, some of that sort of intense focus, would be like, let's say I was out at the beach, I would be digging a hole, and then 3 hours later I would still be digging a hole, and it would be very deep, and my parents would worry because I disappeared. But I would be at this bottomless little pit, and I would still be digging. I don't know where I was digging to, but it was just at the time very interesting to me, and I just got very, very focused on it. So, yeah. So I think I've sort of found a way to sort of take that intensity and focus and direct it, sometimes more successful than others, towards things that are for me meaningful.
Hmm. That is good. I have a question that just triggered here. So, we hear this a lot like, hey, parents, your kids are watching you. Your kids are watching you. And you said how you would see your dad work out every single day, even when he was sick. Do you feel, and I know you mentioned like you saw something of like it's self improvement, but as a child, do you remember like what you would think about seeing that happen? Like, what would you, I don't know,
Yeah,
like
I
if something
mean,
would you remember?
it was just normalized, right? Like he was always
Mm,
exercising, so I didn't, I liked being outdoors and exercise. So or training or sports and all that stuff. So I did that. I think one of my first things where I was a little bit more structured. I would, as a kid, you're not reading personal development books, but I remember I saw, was I think a top 200 player beat a number one player in Davis Cup. That's tennis. And I got
mm,
super inspired. And I was in my mid teens. And I was like, oh, I want to play and get as good as I can get. So I created this like cardboard thing, right? I bought this big cardboard poster board. I broke it up into little lines and I put my goal. My goal was to play college Division 1 tennis. And it was, I was 15, which is super late for tennis. And, so three and a half years to try to get there. And every box, every day, I wrote down what I was doing towards that. So I don't know if I counted the exact boxes, but there was a lot of them. And then every day I would write in what I did towards that goal. And yeah, at the end of 3.5 years, I found my way onto a team. So it was kind of that sort of thing that I've done lots of things like that where it's like, oh, I really want to do this. Now, it's not linear. I mean, there's tons of failures, frustrations. I remember, the first 8 tournaments I went in, I lost first round. It was very pitiful.
mm.
I couldn't beat anyone to a point where your parents, when your parents kind of look at you and kind of like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be torturing yourself, you want your parents to believe in you, but they're kind of like very skeptical that maybe this isn't for you. And
Yeah.
then something clicked, and I just I've won a ton more. But until then, it was just kind of don't know if it's resilience or just lack of short-term memory. But it's like it's just maybe entrepreneurship is part of that, right? And be able to sort of stay with the positive and learn, and then forget about it. The
Mm.
beats afterwards, but stuff like that just kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. And so I can kind of relate with you as being going from, Japan to different countries, from Brazil and then moved to Mexico and then also lived in the US and have traveled, multiple. But how do you look at your parents? Like how is that relationship with your parents now as an adult and looking back at your, the things that they did for you and like moving to, you know, Canada and things of that nature? Like how do you look at them now?
I'm grateful. I mean, it's just you can't. Um, I mean, there's just so many things that kind of fit together, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
because, right? Because I think for me, I'm entrepreneurial minded. I mean, if I stayed in Japan, I love visiting Japan, but it's not very entrepreneurial. My sister loved Japan to the point where she was one when she came over, but she went back, right? Her husband is, full Japanese, right? And that's for her. But for me to be in, North America with our roofing company, coating company in the U.S., I mean, that's just fantastic. It was just right for me, and I was allowed to sort of explore what I wanted to do, and allowed to make mistakes. And I'm hoping that I can sort of do that properly for my kids, is just give them the space to figure out who they are, without them walking into something terrible, right? So
Right. No, that's so just really grateful, which is we're so yeah, I can relate with you there too. Just super grateful for our parents for giving us opportunities. I would say the same in Brazil. It's not, it's interesting dynamic with entrepreneurship, but being able to be in the US and build a company and all those great things, it's been great. So Tats, when you were in college and you were playing tennis, Was there a moment in your life where what were you studying, by the way?
I was studying because I'm an all in person. So I thought, you know what, if I want to be a good tennis player, I need to understand about the body. So I was taking physiology. I mean, ultimately, I didn't graduate with the business degree. I graduated with the kinesiology. I knew that when I was taking that far, and I knew there wasn't a future, and I got injured and all that stuff. Um, I was so close to finishing. I finished it, but I really switched my mindset towards business because,
Mm.
as a child, I also had an interest in business, an interest in sports. I had an interest in business. And I don't know if I told you last time, but I think one of my first entrepreneurial things was when I was 10. Did I tell you about that?
No, no,
So,
you didn't.
okay, so I had a friend that had a pear tree in their backyard, and I thought, oh, you know what if we take these pears and sell them? And picture two 10-year-olds. We're looking for a place to sell these pears. We saw a bus stop, a corner store that didn't sell fruit, and we went over there, set a table, and put these ugly pears on the table for sale. Ugly. They were so ugly. Of course, we're not doing very well. And just before we were gonna pack up, there was a guy and his, I think, girlfriend or wife that came over to our table and says, "I love entrepreneurs," and pulled out a crisp $20 bill and gave it to us. And
I love that.
so our product was horrible. Our execution was horrible. We didn't know what I was doing, but you get rewarded for trying, right? You may fail in many different ways, but at least you're giving yourself a chance for something good to happen. So it kind of always stuck with me, and when sort of my sports dream, which was awesome, and at the time kind of sort of faded off, and with no regrets, trying 100%. Then I thought, what else did I love? And I remembered those type of stories, and that's when I was like 100% in that.
Oh, first, I think it's awesome as entrepreneurs. We get to be, I'm always like, give me opportunities to be that entrepreneur that gives a kid or someone and goes, I love entrepreneurship. Here you go. Like that,
Well,
that,
how many times do you think
that
I've done
motivation.
that?
Probably over 100 times, I would say.
I've tried to do it as much as I could.
Yeah. Like, I think that's so powerful. Like it ingrained in you at 10 years old. And like, that gentleman doesn't know how big of an impact that had, So that was very cool. So Tats, okay, so you graduated college. You then said, okay, I finished because I was almost done. And then you said in kinesiology, am I butchering the name of that? Kinesiology? Man, I'm
Just
butchering.
exercise science or something, that's probably
Perfect. Okay.
yeah.
Exercise science. There you go. And then just said, okay, what did I really love? Business. Okay. So then what was your next step after that? What
Absolutely.
did,
So I just tried to explore it myself, but back then there wasn't all these podcasts. There was some books, but there just wasn't the wealth of, call it, real world sharing that was happening. There was some very well curated books. So I started to read, but then for me, just coming from a sporting background, I knew I needed a coach or a mentor. I mean, that's quite common in sports, but sometimes at the time it wasn't quite common as it is now. And I was like, well, who can I learn from? And luckily, someone that I knew someone that was an inventor, and he invented the of all things, the window media player, sold it to Bill Gates. So he had all these commercial successes on taking an
wow.
idea and commercializing it, and that was the perfect venue for me, because when I was in sports, we kind of, when I first started to do sports business, and try to grow that side. But I've always found I needed the creativity side of things to happen. If it was a little too restricted and sort of modular, my mind, just needed more. So here's some individual that was able to come up with something from, call it, thin air, and test it and get the pluses, and then also commercialize it, right? Which takes a whole range of skills. It's not just marketing. You have to know intellectual property. You have to know this. You have to know that. And that whole process fascinated me, right? So, I spent the first part of my career really trying to understand that. I had a marketing agency that helped launch products. So, feasibility, concept, launch, and I loved it. It was about 70% retail product. So the idea of taking a product that no one knows about and getting into 2,000 stores was awesome to start with. And then I started to think, does the world need another one of these like plastic things? And then I'm getting older, and then kids come, and I started to, not right away, like it wasn't like an instant moment, it started to eat away at me, that like, what am I promoting? What am I adding any sort of net benefit to the world? And that's where sort of the Castagra products came, which Peter invented something at that point 20 years earlier that he never did anything with. And I thought, hey, here's a product, it's plant-based, it has commercial viability, so it's not just good for the environment, it could be good for business. And why don't we improve upon that and develop? So that gave me all the check marks with the creativity, the innovation, the business alignment. And I think alignment is really important if you want to do well.
100%. So interesting that you went, I think, right, kind of more of your youth, you would say, like in your youth, you were like, that's like the excitement of, here's a product no one knows about. Let's get into 2,000 stores. It's like a total, almost like a high, like like an excitement. And so then as life goes, and I think entrepreneurship truly is seasons, right? And I'm a mom of three now. And I look at, our kids, and I'm like, what are we like? We are doing this for them, right? So making sure that there's movement for it. But so then what happened, Tats, is that you said, you know what, is this really making an impact? And then this, like the business that you're with, you guys, Peter started it, which was your mentor, right? That's what you said. Peter, who invented this 20 years ago, freaking brilliant man, 20 years ahead of his time, like way ahead of his time. And then you ran with it and now growing it and building it. So can you tell us more about the product itself? And I know this is a lot of roofing contractors are listening, and even, others are listening, but you took this product that actually, like, how did you even go back to 20 years ideas? Did you like open up his ideas and then go, what could we sell here? Or how did that happen? How did he bring this up to you that this was a product he built 20 years ago? Does he have like a box of products and then you kind of just look through it? Or how did that go?
I just knew the stories, and I also visited some of those past things in the US, and I knew that he had this. He took this and commercialized it to a certain point, but he kind of lost interest, being a bit more on the science side. He understands business and marketing, but it was a bit more on the science side. So sometimes he kind of loses interest, right? It's like, I did it, it's done. And then I just saw that at the time, it was right for me. And I remembered he had that, and he said, hey, why don't we take that and run with it? Because when you get the opportunity to work with so many different ideas and products, you start to see patterns, and you start to be able to assess the quality of the ideas better. Initially you become very skeptical because it's very hard to launch products. So like an idea really needs to be vetted, and I think that was what we were. That's what I was doing for a lot of companies, is like stress testing them. So, but when we looked at this, he goes, hey, wait a minute. It's a coating, it's plant-based, it's got high performance, it has this, and we haven't done anything with it. It just kind of like lit up in my head, and I started pestering Peter about it, and trying to get him excited about it again, on the possibilities of what we could do to change industries. So, I guess, we looked at many different industries, but the neat coincidence, if you look at the properties of the product, now it works really well on flooring and lining water tanks and stuff like that, but for roofing it's almost perfect. And that's accidental, right? That's just accidental. It's just the product and the industry fitting, because it was originally a product that was accidentally invented while he was inventing something else. In the 80s,
Amazing.
there was a lot of curved walls in the high-end homes, and Peter had a friend that was in the carpentry trade, And you would one of their biggest problems was the baseboards along these curved walls in these high-end homes. Well, what they would have to do is cut the wooden baseboards into Lego sized pieces at the bottom and try to assemble them. And the carpentry really wanted something that could be curved, you can nail into and paint with no issue. And and at the time, this is already over 30 years ago, sustainability was very important to Peter. So he said, I will create something, but it needs to be has a sustainable element for it to be interesting. So that's what he did. So he created that product, he scaled it, he sold it. But in the process of, because he has to create thousands and thousands of tests, he came up with the coding by accident, and that's how it happened.
Whoa. And then the name. Tell me the name.
Sure.
Why the name, or where does it come from? Yeah, what's the name? Yeah. Tell me about the
Absolutely.
name.
Our company name Castagra is the main ingredient is the castor plant, which is very prominent in Brazil, right?
Ah.
Brazil, India, right? Castor.
Yes.
They
Yes.
grow like weeds, right? So drought resistance. So castor oil, all right, and the agri part's agriculture. So that was the basis. Is we would try whenever possible to make what we're doing as sustainable as possible, and the technology is based on castor oil. So that's why I call it Castagra.
Castagra. I love that. Nice. And then I love how it's, yeah, the story is remarkable. Did Peter and you make a book? Because you guys totally should make a book.
Well, we
You should
did
write a
when we
book.
were writing. We were consulting all those companies. We realized that one of the major challenges, they call it, we all have blind spots all the time, but with these inventors or people or companies that are trying to bring to the market, the blind spot was, they would fall in love with their own ideas. So we wrote a book called Overcoming Inventoritis. So that was our attempt to try to look at innovation or ideas in a much more scientific way. And ultimately it's a tough challenge. So we got part of it right, but I think over the last I guess since we wrote it, I think it was 2008. So we've evolved from that in terms of what needs to happen. But we were very fortunate because just like I met you on Clubhouse, you were an
Yes,
early.
that's the name.
Yeah, I mean, and being an early adopter, like I know a lot of people come to me once they know that I've worked on a lot of new things, and to see if they're viable or to see them through. And one of the things I tell them, because people always ask, well, how do I get the first early adopter? And the thing I always tell them is, if you want to attract early adopters, be an early adopter,
Oh, that's
right?
good.
You are an early adopter. Probably throughout your career, you were the person in the companies that you worked in the past. And I never asked you about this, but would suggest things and push for change before the majority, right? So when I
Absolutely.
met
Yes.
Clubhouse, I met you. I already know that about you, right? Because
Yeah.
it, and the key is, I was on LinkedIn in 2004. And when I was on LinkedIn on 2004, you basically meet early adopters. And one of the early
Right.
adopters we met was a person named Mitchell Levy, who helped publish the book. And his good friend was the co-founder of Apple. So, Steve Wozniak. So we got a testimonial. I mean, you know, and Steve is so kind. He made it sound like, him and Steve Jobs listened to us or had anything to do with anything that happened at Apple, but wrote this wonderful testimonial. And it, of course, it served us well over the years. But I think the whole process with Mitchell was he introduced us to a lot of people that invented really cool things and technologies that sort of grabbed on and took over the market. And we, through that process, we learned so much about how to get things adopted. And of course, no matter how hard you study, there is just a area of unknown with entrepreneurship, right? Or innovation. And I remember with my podcast, just like yours, I'm always curious of asking these experts. I've done hundreds of these things early on, but I was able to interview someone that did thousands, right? Like thousands,
Mm.
and also the advisor at Microsoft and Autodesk and stuff like that. And I was running him through the scenario, like, okay, I do this, this, and this, and then from here, I there's a fork in the road, and I'm not sure what to do. How should I think about it? And he looks at me and he kind of smiles and goes, at some point you're just going to have to roll the dice. And it's just, no matter how much you expose yourself to it, there's so much of it that we don't have under our control, that we can manage our possibility of success, better. But you never know, and that's the fun of it, and that's also the pain of it, right? So
Totally. So good. I feel like, all right, well, let's wrap. I think that's it. You're awesome. No, Tats is so, like, so wild. First of all, Peter is awesome. I don't know where he is. Tell the man he's awesome. And so, it's so great. But all right. So you said something really interesting. Well, you said many of things very interesting. And now I'm curious about this. But when you, like, being an early adopter is sometimes, like, I'll give you an example. We were an early adopter of a school that launched, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's awesome. It's going to be great. Well, it totally failed. They sold it, and we had to like pivot our kids to another school. So sometimes there is this like moment of excitement because you're like, early adoption, I love it. This is how that happens. But then there's moments where you did early adopt and it didn't go well. So in moments of, I feel like that there is that emotion of like discouragement, Tats, right? You feel discouraged. What do you do in those moments?
well,
What do
it's
you
another.
personally do?
I'll show you what I give you the story on the LinkedIn one, right? So it's on
Right.
2004, early adopter. Basically, met all these people, developed all these relationships, and also you know, there's two ways to become an expert in, let's say, marketing field, right, or established field. You can study for 20 years, or you can be early and run as fast as you can for a year to 3 years. And those are the two options. I prefer to be the early adopter and run as fast as I can. So did I predict LinkedIn was going to be awesome? No. But I can tell you what the process was. I was curious about the area. There's about 300 companies trying to be the LinkedIn. I guessed that there was about 12 that had the possibility of breaking out and being that platform. I monitored them. I learned what I could about them. I realized that there was three strong ones that was coming on. So I went partially in on the three, and I jumped on LinkedIn as soon as I knew it was the one. So in order for early adopters to be right, taking face plants is part of the process. And the only thing I say about those face plants is, as long as the face plants don't take you out, and it's mostly embarrassment, then
Mm-hmm.
you're just one step closer to the right answer.
That's good. And on LinkedIn itself, you have over 19,000 followers. So that's a lot of followers in the LinkedIn world, because it's not a TikTok or anything like that. It's LinkedIn. It's different. It's a different format. And to have 19,000 followers, that's quite a few. Like, that's a hefty volume. So yeah, that's powerful. You just, if it's more embarrassment, then there you're good. As long as it doesn't take you out. I like it. I like it, Tats. That's good stuff. Tats, so as we're getting near, like, what's your next journey? Like, where are you? So we're getting near to the end of the podcast. What's your next journey? So I know you're right here, right now. Like, you built this great company and providing such exceptional support for the roofing industry. And one, we love roofing here. But what's the next season? What's coming up? What's ahead? Do you see
Yeah,
it? Where are you? We'd love to know.
I think, I love the roofing industry. I love talking to people in the roofing industry, featuring them. I love to talk to people about how to make the industry better. But what I realized, is um, I really enjoy helping people reach their full potential. And luckily, within my role, I can do that through in different ways. And there's a simple math thing that has been sort of kind of been following for the last while is I think we all of us have the ability to impact, you know, 2 million people over their lifetime. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think if over 20 years, if you help two people a week make a that have the ability to make a bigger impact. So let's say you help two people a week make an impact on an extra 1,000 people over their lifetime. That's 2 million over 20 years.
That's
So that's what I
powerful.
focus on. Who are the two people that I helped this week? In any way, I don't know. Sometimes the value is just trying, but how do you learn about people's goals? Could you help them clarify what they're doing, or can you assist in any way? I love that opportunity to help, and I've been able to do it in the roofing industry, been able to do it in other industries, but I love that challenge of trying to really understand someone and seeing if there's some small way I can change the trajectory in a very small way.
I love that. So just the continuous of the next season is continue to help, but you have a numbers. You have a number, 2 million, which is and then I love how you broke it down into smaller chunks because now it just seems so realistic, right? So many times we're like, how are you going to do that? 2 million people in X amount of years estimated that will live. But then when you look at it and break it down into chunks, I mean, small pieces, it just seems so much more doable. Very powerful. As always, Tats. I'm like, today you impacted my life. So I want to say you did there. But Tats, thank you so much for being on today. I would love to know if you can share with the audience where can they reach out to you, where are your handles, things of that nature. So we'll
Sure.
put all that information underneath. But yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. LinkedIn, I mean, I guess Instagram, I'm quite active. I enjoy Instagram. Those two probably the most, but I mean, I try to be present in other platforms as well. But those are the two main ones.
Love it. And then what's your name on there? Just should they just put Tats? How do you want to? And then could you say your last name? Because I'm gonna butcher it. I'm gonna butcher it.
Nakagawa. Yeah. Tatsuya,
Nakagawa.
but Tats Nakagawa. Yeah.
Tats Nakagawa. Amazing. It sounds like a brand. It sounds great. I love it. But Tats, thank you so much for being on. And everyone, we will go ahead and put all the details about Tats, how to reach him. And also, if you're literally doing commercial roofing, all of the great things, and you're like, you know what? I want to know more. This is your man. He is the CEO. So pretty awesome that we have you on. Really appreciate you, Tats. And thanks so much for being on our podcast. We'll see you guys next time. You'll listen to us next time or see us. All right. Both. There we go.
Thank you.